Well, welcome everybody. My name's Camilla Nelson and I'm head of the writing program at Notre Dame. I also run the journalism program as well. And I'd like to also introduce my colleague, Philip Dennett. And Philip Dennett, he runs the advertising program, but he also teaches professional writing and corporate writing, and he teaches publishing, and particularly digital publishing is a really big, it's a huge skill, a big growth area at the moment. And of course, Philip teaches straight into our creative writing program, into our professional writing stream. And so he's here to talk. So let me go through. What was that, Philip? Yeah, well, why don't you say hello too now?
Hi everyone. My background is originally as a copywriter for many years, and also I've worked for a lot of publishers. So we're used to rapid change, which is currently happening in the industry, but it's all good, and hopefully you'll learn a lot from the courses we've put together, which we'll share in a moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I should add, in introducing myself, that I used to be a journalist. I've also got a few novels published, and they're the areas in which I teach as well. So why choose Notre Dame? Well, students choose Notre Dame, so that's one good reason. The government tells us that we are #1 in Australia, particularly for overall quality of educational experience, but also learner engagement, skills development, student support, and teaching quality. In fact, look, I think a lot of the students who come to us come because they love the small class sizes. They love having that really a more meaningful relationship with their lecturers. And why else do students come to Notre Dame, Philip?
The biggest thing in my experience is the ability to talk to and interact with a whole variety of different people, and a lot of my students, and I'm sure yours, really enjoy that interaction they get with other people on the course. And interestingly, this semester we've done a lot of it online. That's still one of the things they like, and albeit in this sort of environment, it's still something that's appreciated a lot.
Yeah, I think that one of the great things about doing a course like the Masters in Writing is finding a group. I really do think that part of it is about finding like-minded people who are interested in similar things, and then also forming your own writers group, because writing and reading and thinking about and sharing your work is one of the, it's one of the great skills that you both learn in the writing program, but something that a writer does throughout their career. So finding your tribe is one of the key things that students do find in their degree. So I think we've spoken to this. Learn from experts. Now, we have some fantastic writers teaching into our program. We have people like Tegan Daylight, who is a multi-award winning writer. Her most recent collection is a book of short stories called 6 Bedrooms. But Tegan's also got a new book coming out in July. It's virtually launched under COVID, and it's a book of beautiful essays, and some of the essays that I'm really looking forward to being published and sharing with students, I'm sure Tegan is her essays about writing. Sarah Ayub, who is a young adult writer, in fact, Sarah's been doing a PhD with us as well, and her new novel, it's her 3rd novel, The Cult of Romance, which she wrote during her doctorate, she's almost finished, is going to be published by HarperCollins next year. Sarah's got another list of books, which are all actually on the Premier's Reading Challenge. Mira Atkinson, who is a poet, but also awarded for her work of her memoir, Traumata. And of course, Philip and myself, not to be outdone. I think it's really important in a writing program that you learn from people who are actually working in the field, that is working in the industry, working in publishing, or who are themselves full-time writers. Philip, do you want to say something about this slide?
Where we are, yes, we're right in the middle of the city in Chippendale between, I guess, the Uni of Sydney and UTS, but more importantly, the Central Park Mall, which has lots of great, interesting shops.
I'd always go up to Broadway to Bay Street.
You have an opportunity of the courses are a mix of online. Certainly the two that I am teaching this semester will be mostly online, and then some will be on the campus itself. So it just depends on the subject and the person taking it. But it's an easy place to get to, not far from Central. And if usually all these courses are in the evening anyway, it's pretty easy to find parking around the campus area.
Yeah. So we have 4 courses that are going online this coming semester, but we also have face-to-face courses, and we'll talk a bit about the program when we get to that part of the presentation. So I think the things I want to emphasize here are really small class sizes, that kind of intimate relationship, which I think is really fundamental to a successful writing workshop, and also being taught by people who are in the industry, that is by published writers and by industry professionals. So yeah, we have a great lineup of different sorts of courses. But look, here's a quote from Tegan Daylight, one of our lecturers who I mentioned. And I rather like this quote. Notre Dame feels like a kinder place than other universities. The classes are smaller, meaning I have more time to spend with each student. They're also longer. We can cover more material in greater depth. When I leave my class, I see my students head for Notre Dame's leafy courtyard. Hours later, they're still there, drinking coffee, sitting on the benches in the shade, chatting and laughing. And, you know, I know that Tegan's there is talking about the ambience of actually being in a university that feels a lot more like the university I was at Sydney as an undergraduate, a lot more cozier, comfortable and far more intimate. But I also think that what Tegan's getting at there is that an important part of any writing program is the relationships you forge with fellow students that you take forward with you through your writing career, as well as that one-on-one time with your teacher. Now, I may as well introduce some of our lecturers. Well, you can see Philip and myself already, but here's Tegan, Tegan Daylight. I've already mentioned 6 Bedrooms, which was shortlisted for the Stella Prize, and she lives in the Blue Mountains in Sydney and has 2 children. She's telling us in her byline. The wonderful Sarah Ayub. She's the author of Hate is Such a Strong Word, the Yearbook Committee, and the new book coming out next year with HarperCollins is The Cult of Romance. You know, Sarah does tend to write a lot about growing up in, as a young woman in Western Sydney. And she's a big favourite. She always does she puts together the lineup for the Sydney Writers Festival for the children's lists. And that really is her area of strength. But of course, you know, Sarah also publishes in other fields. She's a freelance journalist, particularly publishers for Elle, or, I mean, her most recent work, she wrote about living through the COVID lockdown with 2 children. Mind you, it's not over yet. That was her most recent story, which was published in, I think it was The Good Weekend, just a couple of weeks ago. So yeah, Sarah also teaches our freelance writing courses, which is freelance writing or journalism, as well as features. Now, I'm going to get Philip to talk to the courses that he teaches, rather than me just read your bio. Philip.
Cool. Yes, I teach 2 of the courses in the writing program. The first one is actually based on publishing, and one of the key things we do there, apart from discuss all of the ins and outs of publishing, is to plan and execute an actual magazine based on a brief that we've developed. And I've found that the students really love doing that, in terms of becoming editors, editing each other's work, choosing the subjects that go into the magazine, and actually putting it together in a production sense, even though it's just a digital magazine in this case. The second one is professional writing, which ranges from content, for example, blogs, to how do you pitch your business. I've found a lot of writers these days are being used instead of, say, for example, marketing people, which was traditional in terms of developing content. But now organizations are looking for people who can tell stories in a really good way. And that's the sort of approach we take to the corporate writing, rather than the rather dry approach that might come from a marketing focus on it.
What I really think, well, what we wanted to put into our degree program was the capacity for students, if they want to do all sorts, to write across different sorts of genres. So on the one hand, we cover literary works, fiction and non-fiction, but we also teach courses which, mind you, I think, which are tremendously important, and they're really courses about how to actually make money from your writing, because it's one thing to actually write away, but if it's something that you want to pursue, even as if either as a hobby or as a career, making money from your work, I think, is tremendously important, and that sort of enables that enables your career. So even if you're aiming to write a new novel, the reality of a writer's life is that you will also have to write about your work in newspapers and magazines. You'll also have to have a social media presence, and you'll probably be running a blog as well. These are the sorts of expectations, in fact, that publishers bring to any sorts of authors that they acquire on their publishing lists. So it's a skill that is that you're going to need at the literary end, but also from just the perspective of being a working writer that is publishing freelance journalism or taking on corporate writing jobs, which are probably the most lucrative form of writing, the best paid, I mean. You need to be able to think more creatively about what you're doing, because it's about, working in those areas, and Philip would talk to this. It's about thinking outside the box and being able to present something that is new and fresh, or at least feels new and fresh. So you get both ends of the spectrum in this particular degree. Well, I haven't introduced, or I have touched on Mira Atkinson. Mira teaches the capstone units in the course. So in this course, either you can take the short courses, which are, you can, if you do the masters, you do the whole lot. But once you've finished the 8 short courses, you then have the choice to embark on a larger project, the major writing project. And this is something that Mira supervises. It's a class that goes over 2 semesters, in which you produce a much longer work than the shorter works in the sort of what I call the skills-based units. Oh, and the last person that I haven't introduced is, of course, this year we were really thrilled to create our sort of inaugural position of writer in residence. Which Charlotte Wood, currently she's with us now until the end of the year. As our writer in residence. Charlotte, you may have seen her work. She won the Stella Prize for The Natural Way of Things, but her book that's out now that I absolutely love is The Weekend, and of course my fingers are absolutely crossed that Charlotte's going to get the Miles Franklin this year. So she's definitely in the running. Yeah, I did say to Charlotte, you know, you don't want to, in theatre they would say break a leg. I don't know, you don't say that to writers, but still, Charlotte said, I am allowed to hope without feeling guilty. That would be tremendous if she wins that, but seems to be getting a prize a minute for The Weekend in any case. Short courses. So Philip's told you a little bit about his courses. I'm going to go through, perhaps I'll run quickly through the whole course list. And if you've got questions, feel free to just text them in or just interrupt Philip and I, and we'll answer any questions that you may have. So the courses don't need to be taken in this order. But I will just go through them in this particular order. So reading and writing, this is a really foundational skills-based course. It doesn't need to be your first unit, but it is a fantastic first unit to choose. Basically, being able to write better is actually about being able to read better. Being able to write better is the capacity to read your work in a more critical way. In some senses, I think that we read so often for enjoyment that the writing just slides across our view. What this course tries to do is to get you to look beyond just that beautiful soft surface, to see how the writing's been put together. So a little bit like, you know, being backstage at the theatre rather than out in the audience. This is a course that makes writing feel like a lot of hard work. Rather than just something to enjoy, but I'm not knocking enjoying reading at all. Fiction writing, well, this is, you know, creating the building blocks for a successful story. This could be the beginning of a short story or short story collection, or indeed the beginnings of a novel. Putting that together in this particular course. Fiction writing, even if you're interested in non-fiction or in journalism, you'll find that a lot of literary writers pilfer sort of different sorts of literary techniques or fictional techniques, and then they use them in other contexts. So again, I think that fiction writing is a pretty foundational skill, even if what you're really interested in is non-fiction or journalism or other sorts of writing. The essential skill here is show, don't tell. Creative non-fiction. Writing about your experience, or indeed that should be other people's experience. Fiction writing and creative non-fiction writing this semester, starting in the 27th of July, Philip, is that right? Yeah. They're going to both be taught online. You can take those courses from your particular from home, and in fact next semester, well, next year, if you want to keep on with the courses, there'll be an option to do them either way. Playwriting is bringing characters to life. That's a course that really needs to be taught face-to-face. We've got a theatre at Notre Dame. In fact, we've got a theatre program at Notre Dame as well. That's really a really practically oriented theatre program. And so what's wonderful about this course is learning the difference between you know, words that are acted out on a stage, or the difference between, you know, what the teacher's body work and reading. It's a very different kind of writing. So too screenwriting. In fact, theatre writing and screenwriting are in fact very different. So transferring creative ideas to the big screen is what you study in screenwriting. Freelance writing, which focuses on features and journalistic writing. Editing and publishing in the digital age, and corporate writing, which Philip's already spoken about, but they're your courses, Philip. So what would you like to add?
The publishing course is, I mentioned before about developing a magazine, but it's also a lot to do with the skills you'll need to actually work in a publishing environment. Because when I first started working with publishers, you had somebody to do every small bit of the publishing task. But now the writer is actually expected to be a sub-editor and to proofread their own work, and to also help develop themes and ideas, for example, in a magazine. So that course is very much about getting the skills you'll need to be successful if you want to work for a publisher, but also today, particularly with the ability to work online, you can develop your own publishing venture without the kind of inherent risks that there were in the past in terms of the legacy costs that were involved.
Yeah, it does seem that, you know, across all of these sorts of creative industries that are profiled in these courses, you know, writers have to do that multifaceted work. You have to edit as well as write, and you have to learn to come up with ideas and also come up with perfect copy. So learning all of those different skills is a real fundamental. Your editor will no longer save you.
No, that's right. It starts and ends with you, the writer.
I know, I miss my editor at The Conversation. She moved to the UK, and it's just not the same, you know. Yeah, I have to learn to turn my hand to editing myself. Were there any questions, by the way, about those courses? No, well, look, we'll keep going, and do use the text function or anything like that if you want to ask something. How does the if you decide these courses, you can either do a short course, you can do it as you can do it for degree or not for degree. You can do it as a one-off, or you can do it as part of a master's program. If you do choose to do the master's program, which it runs for 1.5 years, 18 months, that's if you take it full-time. Most students, or at least many students, tend to take the writing masters on a part-time basis, because that allows you to integrate the course with your work, with your paid work during the day. And also I think that it lets people like it, because it means that you can spend more time on your creative work, on your writing. It's more leisurely that way. So if you do choose to do the masters, you can do 18 months, or you can go for 3 years, or however long you like. You'll do the 8 units that I went through on the previous page, which are the units that I call sort of skill building units, where you can find your feet in a particular genre and maybe try out other genres that you haven't sort of tried to work with before. If you do choose to go on to do the masters, you do a capstone, a series of capstone units. They are they're the 2 units, creative units, that Mira teaches, which is a year-long course where you'll write a longer piece, an extended piece of writing in any genre. So this could be, you know, part of a novel. It could be short stories. It could be a screenplay. It could be a work of journalism or non-fiction. So it really is an extended work in any genre of your choice. The way the program works, of course, and the way many writers' programs work, are that you bring your writing in every week, and you go through and discuss it with your lecturer and other students, and you work out what's working and what's not working, and then how to grow the work into something that's larger than itself. So it's getting that sort of support that you need, and that kind of critical distance that you need on your work. Also in the that sort of extra master's package, you would do a research unit. So this in this unit, you do a sort of it's more like a literary studies or a media studies unit, depending on your chosen genre, where you'll write a sort of more critical investigation of the creative project that you've chosen. And that's packaged up together with the creative work to form what we call a thesis, because I guess writing at universities, we ask our students at this level to embrace both the critical and the creative components of their project. So it, and also it's a really good way to critically think through problems in your work, as well as to creatively think them through. The other unit that you do is a unit in ethics, which is taught by the Department of Philosophy. We have a general education component at Notre Dame, so ethics is taught, or a unit or several units at undergraduate, to all of our students. So ethics in professional life, and the ethics of writing is what you can investigate there, is also a unit. And that together makes up that sort of master's package, together with the other programs. Philip, anything you've got to add? Have I missed something out?
The good thing is that you don't actually have to make a decision right now. You can actually just pick a course that you want to do and then see how you go. And even if you take a break after that and come back for more, you can still gradually build that up into a formal master's if you want, or just use it for your own personal development.
Yeah, and I think that both ways work really well. Yeah, you can either do those units as short courses, or if at the end of the day you want to pursue the whole degree, and if you're, you know, for teachers and many other professionals, sometimes having that extra degree is actually it's important. So that is there as well. So that's what the degree looks like in the regulations. Look, you know, the universities set this out as some, you know, year 1, year 2, year 3. But I just don't think that you don't need to do the units in that particular order. People tend to start with the units that they feel more comfortable with, or with that they're interested in, and do them in any order, or only do some of the units if you want to use the courses for your own personal development, rather than use the courses towards the big master's program, that kind of undertaking. So that brings us to the end of our presentation. Philip, do you want to wrap up?
Sure. Writing is something that I think a lot of people tend to think, oh, it's a difficult thing to learn, or it's hard to build a career in. But our approach is really about telling stories, and you'll find out the way in which you can tell a story for a particular audience in a particular genre that's really going to resonate with them. And it doesn't matter whether you're into corporate type writing or fiction or non-fiction. Essentially, that commitment and connection with an audience to tell a story that resonates with them is what all writing's about. And I find the way in which we work generally enables conversations to take place. And that's the big thing for me, is in conversing with other people, your lecturers and the other students as well, you tend to build up a wider range of experience, but also float ideas and get people's feedback in a non-threatening environment. And I think that's probably, from my perspective and from the students I've worked with, one of the big things that they find out of it is that collegial atmosphere, if you like.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to what I flagged not so eloquently as Philip, about finding your tribe. This idea of being able to try out your ideas with a small sort of like-minded audience, in a non-threatening way. That word non-threatening does come up with some students. That's what they love. They love that they can get their work out there and get the support they need, but in a way that's comfortable, and grow the work like that.